What you've got to understand about the aggressive regular is that they are looking to exploit you where they think your range is weak. If they smell blood, if they think that you might be overfolding or that you are too capped, that is where they are going to start over bluffing. And they get away with it. They get rewarded for this because generally the aggro reg is a good player and they're attacking in spots where people are actually folding a lot. So with my river line in this hand, I actually intentionally pick a bit of a smaller sizing than perhaps I could go, although I think this is totally a thing and fine in theory as well. And the reason I do that is that my opponent is an aggressive regular and I just want to leave that door open for them to not just call me with worse, but also to take a hand that could call or could fold and would normally be in that sort of situation on the horns of that dilemma, and then introduce a third option, which is to, well, spew, or maybe just make a good bluff raise against pool that's a bad bluff raise against my hand and my strategy. So let's look at how we got to this spot. So we have ace jack off here in the small blind, villain opens on the button and we make a 3-bet, which is normal. Villain calls. I knew this was an aggro reg, just the sort of tag I have on this player. There's a bunch of these people now in various pools. They're not just limited to high stakes and 500 NL mid stakes games. You will see these people at 50 NL, 100 NL. It's a thing. These days, the pool is getting more and more aggressive. It's very important that you mark these people a certain color and you mark the more passive people who are under bluffing another color, and that your strategy is just completely night and day against each. You should be playing incredibly differently against people like this than you should the more ABC reg. So we go for a small c-bet on ace-ace-9, as we will really often, and this is the first point in the hand where we just offer villain the chance to start attacking. We say, okay, we've only bet small on the flop. We know that you've got to the turn with a lot of combos like Jack 10 of diamonds and Queen Jack of spades and many hands like this. And we just say, would you care to start attacking me? Sure, we could triple barrel here, but aggro regs, they don't generally like to call down much. They tend to like to do the aggressing. Most of them are not stations. In fact, a lot of them actually overfold and you can bluff them really effectively. More on that later. Just because someone's aggressive doesn't mean you can't bluff them. It just means that you don't want to have a really capped range and then overfold in an obvious way. That's the main thing you want to avoid doing. So protecting your checking range and slow playing a lot of hands in what would be theoretically optional bet spots is a really good way to go. So in this situation, if you just routinely bet ace jack here, well, first you need to understand that you should be putting some ace x into your checking range. With the heart, you're probably checking more often. In the solver, I don't know. You can let me know if I'm right about that in the comments. But I just figure, yeah, I'm going to check here. And I don't think this is going to be an amazing 3-street hand. Yeah, you could go for 3 streets on a bunch of runouts. It would be okay. But I don't think this is a spot like where we have 9s, where we're just like, amazing. This is an incredible 3-street spot. I don't think so. So we opened the door there. Villain didn't take it this time. That might indicate that they don't actually have air. Because when an aggressive regular has air and you check to them, they picture your range as like queens and jacks and kings and stuff like this. And rightly so. Maybe a bad ace, maybe like 10-9 suited, pocket 8s, pocket 7s. And they try to make you fold lots of that by the river. And normally, for most of you watching this video, they succeed at making you fold that range. You probably overfold to turn and river aggression here if you check this turn, because most people do. So I'm intentionally making sure that I'm over defending after checking the turn against this player. On the river, I have a few options. I could check and just say, okay, give them another chance to bluff me. The problem with that is I think a lot of really aggressive regulars are going to take the double barrel bluff line rather than waiting until river here. It's not really in an aggro reg's nature to check back and then try to aggress. They're not generally very balanced. When you're playing low stakes poker, even mid stakes poker, most of your opponents are either too passive or too aggressive. So it follows that the aggressive players are actually too aggressive. The players who are bluffing enough are actually over bluffing. Very few people who are bluffing just enough, right? They're either under bluffing or over bluffing. Very important that you have your 2 tags, that you're sorting people into aggro and passive, and that you're doing a really religious job of that. You're doing it all the time. You can even scour the lobby before you start tagging people that have aggressive stats that look like that 4-tabling, that kind of thing. So when we pick this line, one, we can get value from a hand like 10s or 10-9, or, okay, a bad ace, we're missing out on some value here. Villain has like ace-5 suited or something. That's the hand this costs against, right? But there's not that many combos of that. You're just talking about like some suited ace-x of spades. It's really quite a combinatorically hard hand to have. What are the easy hands for villain to have here? Well, sure, they can have like a few combos of flushes, king 10, king queen, queen 10 of hearts, that sort of thing. Some suited connected like 6-5 of hearts that they've not bet on turn. Unlikely though. by far the most likely thing they have here is like a 9 or 8s or 7s or 5s or 6s or something like that. These hands are really, really likely. Maybe something like 4 or 5 of spades that called something with a bit of showdown value. So when you go small here, you open 2 different doors to the aggro reg. 1, you let them call you with worse. And 2, you let them turn some of those hands that are kind of like, I don't really want to get milked. I don't want to get value towned. I don't really want to just flick in a call with pocket 8s and lose to queens. You open the door for villain to try to bluff you. Now, we have a phenomenal bluff catcher here. We have an ace, which blocks full houses and the best trips combos, although I'm not sure if people will raise those. And then we have a heart, which blocks king, jack, queen, jack, jack 10, jack 9 of hearts. It blocks so many of the relevant flushes. So this is a fantastic combo for the job of bet call anyway. But when your opponent is too aggressive, this just becomes so winning. Because as soon as villain is taking some hand, okay, they had a heart here. I don't really think that matters much. The 8 of hearts is kind of an irrelevant card. And as soon as your opponent is taking hands like this and saying, do you know what? I'm going to take bluff catchers and just attack with them en masse. You have got villain right where you want them. So if you see an aggressive regular, if there's someone in your games that's giving you trouble, guys, if somebody picks on you in the playground, you just like bet small with ace jack when you have trips in a 3-bet pot and call them. And then you get your lunch money back, and much, much more. All right, this hand is absolutely wild. I didn't have as good a read on this player, but it was kind of apparent to me that they were a 4-tabling, aggressive regular. They seem to come out a lot in the afternoons. I've noticed the morning games are just way higher EV. There seem to be way more passive fish and whales on in the mornings. I think it's because it's late at night at other parts of the world where people are still up, or it's already evening and people are like winding down in certain other parts of the world. I don't know, but like the afternoon games seem to be full of 4-tabling, more aggressive players on GG Poker at the moment. This looked to be one of them. We go ahead and open small blind here for 2.5. The flop is 10-10 deuce. This is a board we're going to be betting very, very often. King Jack actually starts to function as somewhat of a value bet here. Because it's hard to have a pair and it's hard to have a 10, you block a lot of the main offsuit 10x with this combo, which are of course way more likely than suited 10x, so you want to block the offsuit stuff more than the suited stuff when it comes to like trips. And so we just go small here, and I expect that if villain raises here, they're overbluffing. And that's because once you have the thought to raise like queen jack or queen 9 or jack 9 or jack 8 or 4 or 5 on this board, you're just doing it too much, right? So I also think that some people will just like not always raise a 10, or at least a bad 10 in this spot. So we get raised really, really small. And whenever I see like a raise size like this, I immediately think, could this be like an MDA sort of guy that studied that people aren't that elastic to flop sizes? Because out of position, when you see bet range, you are probably overfolding to this, guys. Like if you're watching this video, you're probably overfolding to this very line, and you're probably just not really thinking about the sizing too much. You're just betting with your random hand, like 2 over cards. You're seeing a raise and you're going, meh. If you don't have ace queen, ace king, like good showdown value, you may well be folding here, but I'm not going to fold king jack in this spot because 1, if villain has a pocket pair, which is an okay small raise here, I have a ton of redraw equity. I can outdraw pocket 6s on a board like 7-7 or anything that contains a jack or a king. I have some backdoor straight draws. I block the main 10x and I just have showdown value. Like people aren't really doing this with ace high. They're more likely to just call. So this is a very nutty bluff catcher because we don't need an ace to have a bluff catcher here. We need a big card like a king that can beat jack high at showdown, and we need to have like reasonable redraw to make it one of our premium bluff catchers. So I think king jack is like actually quite a good bluff catcher in this node. It's redrawing much more successfully than something like 5s is against a lot of the opponent's range, and it's doing a way better job of blocking their value range and unblocking bluff range as well. I don't think a king is a super likely hand to be bluffing us in this spot. So blah, blah, blah. Lots of theory reasons to think this is a good call. And I think in practice, it's a much better call. The turn is an 8, and we check, and villain checks back. So now I think pool does a very, very bad job of having enough 10x. I think people check raising or raising the flop and then checking the turn with trips is kind of unheard of. So I expect this to be just basically air a lot of the time now. The thing about beating aggro regs is identifying spots in the game tree where they have way too much air and then making sure that you give them an incentive to bet it. So on the river here, betting looks ridiculous. It looks horrible. We're still beating everything that was bluffing us on the flop. If villain has somehow got a deuce here, yeah, we're going to lose a big bet probably. And yeah, we're just going to check call the river because there just aren't enough value combos that can play this way. As soon as you have any intention to bluff this river at all, and for what it's worth, I think this is a really like really bad bluff spot against a thinking opponent. I think you're going to get called all day here, but a lot of your aggressive reg opponents that aren't successful mid-stakes and high-stakes pros are too aggressive, right? They have the instinct to be aggressive in some spots that works out well for them, and they might do okay at the game, but they're too aggressive. Their blue line's like really tanking because they don't know when to take their foot off the gas, and that's how you exploit the sort of low-stakes maniacal reg. So really easy call with king high. Like, we're beating all bluffs. I don't imagine villain is going for too much thin value for the sizing, though it's possible we're just getting owned by like 7 sometimes, but you know, c'est la vie. Villain has 6-4. I think their flop raise is normal, but once you start raising hands like this all the time, you probably end up just over raising, and that's fine against pool. It works well against pool. It doesn't work well against me because I'm trying not to put myself in a situation where I have tons of just small bet folds on this flop. That's the very thing I'm trying to avoid. And if you can identify spots where a villain is going to overbluff from the flop against a certain line, it's not just that you should overprotect that line, but you should actually try to avoid putting your bad hands into that line. So if you have your villain tagged as an aggressive regular here, try not to make a small c-bet with Jack 4 of diamonds if you think they're just going to attack that all day. Either just check fold your hand and wait for a hand that can actually stand up to the aggression. That's fine. Or if you're feeling really frisky, take some kind of really aggro re-exploit line like bet 3, bet the flop. I wouldn't recommend that with Jack 4 of diamonds. It's okay to just check fold the absolute bottom of your range against people that are just attacking every line that you do on boards like this, and then just load up your bet small and check ranges with hands that are going to continue and just under defend. Yeah, this hand felt pretty good because whenever you have an absolutely terrible hand like king high and you get to bluff catch, it feels great. And like, maybe the biggest mistake that my students make here is that because they have king high and they're not that skilled at reacting to board texture, they don't even see their hand as a bluff catcher. Like, from the flop, they don't even view this as showdown value because they don't appreciate the polarization of a raise like this and how easy it is at this price for villain to be over bluffing. The smaller villain goes, the more of their range should be value, whether that be a 10 or some pocket pair here, the less of their range should be 6-4 of hearts. So as their sizing gets smaller and smaller, they have a more limited tolerance for combos like 6-4 of hearts in their range, and it's just much more easy to overbluff. It's kind of like a bull in a china shop. Like, as soon as it starts rampaging, everything just gets smashed to pieces, right? That's not normally the way that analogy is used, but I think it kind of works for all intents and purposes here. Okay, next hand, last hand of the video. This one was really quite fun, and this is an exploit that people miss against aggressive players all the time. By the way, guys, if you are looking to bring your game to the next level and it's about time to get serious and formal about your poker education, we have a gigantic thing called the Carrot Poker School right now at Carrot Corner. Because you're watching this YouTube video, you can use the code STOPLOSING to get 20% off all of our courses. Check out at Carrot Corner. There comes a time when it really is just time to start studying the game fully. Maybe that time is now, maybe not. Maybe you're okay with YouTube content. Let's get into the last hand, and I think you'll really enjoy this one. This is one that requires quite a bit of nerve, but I think it makes a lot of sense if you can train yourself to pull the trigger in spots like this. So this hand begins like any good story does with the 3 deuce of spades. We have a small open, we have a call from a recreational player. You guys will have heard me preaching in it to win it many times in the past, and that is basically that if there is a recreational player playing really badly in the pot here, the small blind, who's not going to become the main villain in this hand, but they do incentivize this pre-flop call, you just absolutely have to get involved, because the mistakes these people make are huge. They're losing at extremely big clips. It could be like double digits, 40 BB per 100, you know, who knows. And, you know, the other people in the pot with them are the beneficiaries of that. The people who have folded pre are not the ones that are going to benefit from those mistakes. So yeah, this is the benefactor, we're the beneficiary. Let's just be in the hand. So we flop something that makes a pretty nice check raise. I'm going to use the Weapons of War. I think it's lecture 3 of that course sizing here. I'm really just interested in check raising deuce 4 suited, which I have, by the way, in this spot, and 3s and 5s and 5-3 for value in this hand. Maybe ace 5, ace 3 at some frequency as well, although that would be maybe less frequent. And therefore I have some bluffs. And when I block 2 pair in a set and have a straight draw, I don't know, this is just like a very good hand to put in the check raise range. So I use the big check raise sizing. You could go even bigger here. You could go like 13 or 14 if you really wanted. Because of the way you're building this range, it's pretty solid to actually go this kind of sizing with it. And your value hands mainly are just craving that sizing. Value dictates the sizing you want to go. Your bluffs are kind of following suit and playing along. So we go that sizing. The turn, I'm going to be giving up quite a lot of like terrible flush draws here. I'll be giving up a lot of like some of the backdoor stuff I raised, and 3 deuce is, it's not great, and I don't think it's a pure continue, and I think it's getting quite close to a give up, but this is you know, something I've talked about before. This is a scary, scary line for your opponent to face. If they have bet too much of their ace-x on the flop and bet called too much of their ace-x on the flop, then they have either an ace or a flush draw just far too often on this node and not enough 2-pair plus. And if your opponent gets to the river in a spot where they just don't have that much 2-pair plus, okay, here ace-king gets there, which really sucks, but that's only going to be 9 combos in the rest of villain's ace-x that they have from cutoff, especially stuff like ace-4 that is just, you know, is always going to be calling the turn, and diamond could be king x of diamonds, 8x of diamonds, or just queen high. It doesn't really matter, but I feel like this is a river spot where you just kind of have to go for it against an aggressive player. Because the thing with aggressive players is that there's 2 types of them. There's like an aggro fish that we're not talking about here, and the aggro fish is basically flailing and spewy in all directions, right? They want to invest by attacking you and bluffing, and they also want to aggress with like too thin for value and also just station you a lot. And that's not the sort of player you ever take this line against. But the aggro reg loves to be the bully. They love to be the one throwing their weight around and making other people fold. They don't like to pay people off. The whole point of being an aggro reg is that you're just that way inclined. You don't like the feeling of being milked and paying off, and you want to pride yourself on being able to fold, but being able to bluff. And you'll do very well in most low stakes games, and even some mid-stakes games that aren't super tough, if you're just very good at bluffing and very good at folding. Those are the 2 kind of core skills that you need. And the strong aggro regs in the pool, therefore, quite like to overfold in spots that they perceive to be underbluffed. And one such spot that they perceive to be underbluffed is multi-way pot, raise, bet, bet. Especially when they get to the river with a bit too much ace-x and misdraws and, you know, newly made pair of kings and stuff like that. So when we jam the river here, we get the fold this time, but I think this is just a spot where, you know, it's really good. If we check, by the way, we don't have any showdown because villain's meant to bluff us with queen jack of diamonds by this point, so you don't want to think about this as like you have any realizable showdown value. You'd have to kind of check fold the river probably. We could talk about check calling, that's a bit of a sick play, but probably you would end up check folding in real life, let's face it. And yeah, that's not going to go very well for you, so just decided to shove here. I like it. I think this often gets missed. When regs are aggro, it's very easy to become afraid of them and to just like run away from them and take a flight mentality. But what you really should be doing is offering them lots of incentive to bluff you when you're strong and bluffing them when you're weak. And that's kind of the secret recipe to crushing aggro regs. I hope this has helped you. If you want to build on the themes today, Weapons of War is definitely the course I'd recommend for taking your game to the next level, in the same vein of like getting better plays into your game, like exploiting people, but also combining it with theory. That's where it's at, so recommend that course. Use code STOPLOSING at Carrot Corn. I'll be back here with more content very soon. And please do take a minute to subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. It really helps boost everything for Carrot Corner. It helps me grow this channel, it helps me get up towards 30k. Like the video as well, leave a comment. Let's discuss these hands, let me know what you think, and I'll see you next time. Bye for now.